The dust kicked up around Ethan York's boots as he rode into Casa Grande, Arizona territory, on that blistering afternoon in July of 1878. And the first thing he heard besides the wind was the sound of a woman weeping like her heart had shattered into 1,000 pieces. He pulled his horse to a stop, squinting against the harsh sunlight that beat down on the desert landscape, and spotted her about 50 yards off the main road. A wagon sat tilted at an awkward angle, one wheel completely broken, splintered wood scattered across the dry ground. The woman knelt beside it, her shoulders shaking with each sob, her pale blue dress covered in dust and dirt. Ethan had been riding for 3 days straight, coming from Colorado, where he had sold off a herd of cattle for a rancher who paid well but treated his men poorly. He was tired, hungry, and wanted nothing more than a hot meal and a soft bed, but something about the sight of that crying woman pulled at something deep in his chest. His mother had raised him to never pass by someone in need, especially not a woman alone on these dangerous roads. He turned his horse toward her, moving slowly so as not to startle her. "Madam," he called out when he was close enough. "You need some help." The woman's head jerked up, and Ethan felt his breath catch in his throat. Even with tears streaking through the dust on her face, even with her auburn hair falling loose from its pins, she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Her eyes were the color of honey, wide and filled with a mixture of fear and hope. She looked to be in her early 20s, close to his own age of 26, and there was something about the set of her jaw that told him she was stronger than her tears suggested. She started, then stopped, wiping at her face with the back of her hand. "My wheel broke. I was traveling to meet someone in Casa Grande, and the road got rough. And then there was this terrible sound, and now I'm stuck here, and I don't know what to do." Ethan dismounted, tying his horse to the back of the wagon before walking around to examine the damage. The wheel had hit a rock or a deep rut by the looks of it. The spokes were splintered, the rim cracked beyond any simple repair. He crouched down, running his hands over the broken wood, calculating what it would take to fix it. "This is pretty bad," he said honestly, "but I can fix it. I've got some tools in my saddlebag, and there's enough wood here that I can fashion something that will get you to town at least. After that, you'll need a proper wheelwright to make you a new one." The woman stood up, brushing off her dress with trembling hands. "I can pay you." "Not much, but I have some money saved." Ethan shook his head, already moving toward his horse to retrieve his tools. "No need for that. Can't leave a lady stranded out here. Too dangerous." He paused, realizing he had not even introduced himself. "Name's Ethan York. I'm a rancher, though I've been doing some cattle driving lately." "Lillian Harper," she said softly. "Most people call me Lily." She watched as he pulled out a leather tool roll and a coil of rope. "Are you sure you can fix it?" "I've been sitting here for over an hour trying to figure out what to do. I even tried to ride one of my horses, but they're draft horses, not riding horses, and I couldn't manage it." Ethan looked at the 2 large horses hitched to the wagon. They were good, strong animals, clearly well cared for. Draft horses need special handling for riding. You made the right choice not trying too hard. Could have gotten yourself hurt. He set to work, using his knife to trim away the most damaged pieces of the wheel. "What brings you to Casa Grande, if you don't mind me asking?" Lily was quiet for a moment, and when Ethan glanced up, he saw fresh tears sliding down her cheeks. She quickly brushed them away. "I was supposed to meet my intended. We've been engaged for 6 months, corresponding by letter. He sent for me to come from Santa Fe, said we would be married as soon as I arrived." Her voice broke. "But when I stopped at the last town for supplies, I received a telegram. He's called off the engagement, said he's met someone else, someone whose father owns a hotel and can help him in business." He doesn't want me anymore." The pain in her voice hit Ethan harder than he expected. He had been in love once, years ago, with a girl back in Texas where he grew up. She had chosen someone else too, someone with more money and better prospects. He understood that particular brand of heartbreak all too well. "I'm sorry," he said, and he meant it. "That's a terrible thing to do to someone." Lily let out a bitter laugh. "The worst part is, I sold everything I owned to come here. My father died 2 years ago, and I've been living with my aunt in Santa Fe, working as a seamstress. I thought this was my chance for a new life, a family of my own. Now I have nothing to go back to and no reason to continue forward." Ethan worked in silence for a few minutes, using rope to bind the broken spokes together and reinforcing them with strips of wood he carved from the extra lumber he always carried. The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly and sweat dripped from his brow, but he kept working. Finally, he spoke again. "Well, I fixed your wagon wheel," he said, testing the repair with his weight. "It held, though it would not last forever. But seems to me like there's something else broken here that needs fixing." Lily looked at him, confusion clear on her face. "What do you mean?" Ethan stood, wiping his hands on his pants. He looked her straight in the eye, his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with the heat or the hard work. "Your heart seems like it's pretty broken too, and I'd like permission to try and fix that as well if you'll let me." The words hung in the air between them. Lily's eyes widened, her mouth opening in surprise. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "No," Ethan agreed, "but I'd like to. And you don't have anywhere to be now, and I don't have anywhere I need to be either. I've got enough money saved to take some time off from work. We could get to know each other. No promises, no pressure. Just two people seeing if maybe something good could come from something that started out bad." Lily stared at him for a long moment, and Ethan could see the war happening behind her eyes. Fear battled with hope, caution wrestled with the desire to take a chance. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Okay," she said, "but I want to be clear about something. I'm not looking for someone to save me. I can take care of myself. What I need is someone who sees me as an equal, not as a burden or a prize." Ethan smiled, a real genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I wouldn't want it any other way." They rode into Casa Grande together, Lily driving her wagon with the repaired wheel holding steady, Ethan riding alongside her on his horse. The town was small but growing, with a main street lined with businesses and houses spreading out in all directions. The arrival of the Southern Pacific Railroad, a few years earlier, had brought new life to the area, and the population had swelled with miners, ranchers, and families looking for opportunities in the Arizona territory. Ethan helped Lily find a room at the boarding house run by a kind older woman named Mrs. Patterson, who took one look at Lily's tear-stained face and immediately went into mother hen mode. While Lily settled in, Ethan took her wagon to the wheelwright and arranged for a proper repair. Then he found himself a room at the hotel and took the time to clean up and think about what he had just done. He had essentially asked a complete stranger if he could court her, right there on the side of the road. It was impulsive, reckless even, and completely unlike his usual careful nature. But there was something about Lily that called to him. Maybe it was the vulnerability she had shown even while maintaining her dignity. Maybe it was the strength he saw beneath the tears. Or maybe it was simply that moment of recognition, soul meeting soul, that rare connection that some people spend their whole lives searching for. That evening, Ethan took Lily to dinner at the town's best restaurant, a small establishment run by a Mexican family that served incredible food. They sat across from each other at a corner table, and for the first time they really looked at each other without the crisis of the broken wagon between them. "Tell me about yourself," Lily said, folding her hands on the table. "Where are you from? What's your family like? Ethan leaned back in his chair, considering where to start. I grew up in Texas, near San Antonio. My father was a rancher, had a decent spread of land. I have 2 younger sisters and a younger brother. My father taught me everything about working with cattle and horses, about reading the land and the weather. My mother made sure we all knew how to read and write, and she taught us about treating people with respect, regardless of who they were. That sounds like a good childhood, Lily said wistfully. It was, Ethan agreed. But when I was 21, I fell in love with a girl named Catherine. We were supposed to be married. Then a banker's son came to town and she chose him instead. It hurt badly, and I decided I needed to start over somewhere new. So I left Texas and started working my way west, taking jobs where I could find them. I've been a ranch hand, a cattle driver, even worked as a deputy for a few months in Colorado, though I didn't much care for that. I'm good with my hands, good at fixing things and working with animals. Lily nodded slowly. Is that why you stopped to help me? Because someone broke your heart too and you understood how it felt, partly, Ethan admitted. But also because it was the right thing to do. And because something told me I was supposed to stop. I can't explain it better than that. Their food arrived, steaming plates of beef and vegetables with fresh tortillas, and they ate while Lily shared her own story. She had grown up in Santa Fe, the daughter of a surveyor who had died when a rope broke during a job. Her mother had died years earlier from influenza, leaving Lily alone except for her father's sister. She had worked as a seamstress to help make ends meet, and when James, her former intended, had started courting her by letter, it had seemed like a dream come true. He wrote such beautiful letters, Lily said quietly, staring at her plate. He talked about building a life together, about the opportunities here in Arizona territory. He said he wanted a partner, someone intelligent and capable. I thought I had found someone who valued me for more than just my appearance or my cooking skills. Maybe you have, Ethan said gently. Just not the person you expected. Lily looked up at him and something passed between them, something warm and promising. Maybe, she said softly, but we should take this slow. I don't want to make another mistake. Agreed, Ethan said. How about we make a deal? We'll spend the next month getting to know each other, really know each other. No pretending to be something we're not. At the end of that month, we'll both decide if we want to continue. Lily extended her hand across the table. Deal. Ethan shook her hand, feeling the calluses on her fingers from years of sewing, the strength in her grip. This was a woman who knew hard work, who had faced difficulties and survived. He respected that. The next weeks fell into a pattern that felt both natural and exciting. Ethan found work at a nearby ranch, helping to break horses and repair fencing. The pay was decent, and the work kept him in town rather than out on the trail. Lily took a job with the town's dressmaker, a cheerful woman named Mrs. Chen, whose husband had come to work on the railroad and decided to stay. Lily's skills with a needle were exceptional, and she quickly became invaluable to the business. Every evening after work was done, Ethan and Lily would spend time together. Sometimes they would walk through the town, talking about everything and nothing. Other times they would sit in the boarding house parlor, Mrs. Patterson acting as an impromptu chaperone while they played cards or simply talked. On Sundays, they would attend church together, then spend the afternoon exploring the surrounding desert, always careful to stay within sight of town and to bring plenty of water. Ethan learned that Lily loved to read, that she had a sharp mind for mathematics, and that she could make him laugh with her dry observations about people and situations. She learned that Ethan was patient and kind, that he had a gift for understanding animals, and that he carried a deep sense of responsibility toward others. They shared their fears and their dreams, their regrets and their hopes. One evening, about 3 weeks after they met, they were sitting on the porch of the boarding house, watching the sun set over the desert in a blaze of orange and pink. Lily had been quiet all evening, and Ethan could sense something weighing on her mind. "What are you thinking about?" he asked gently. Lily was silent for a moment, then said, "I'm scared. This feels too good, too right. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for you to tell me you've changed your mind or that you're not who I think you are." Ethan reached over and took her hand, the gesture feeling more natural than anything he had ever done. "I'm scared too," he admitted. "I'm scared that you'll realize you could do better than a cowboy who spends most of his time covered in dust and horsehair. I'm scared that I'm not educated enough or refined enough for someone like you." Lily squeezed his hand. "That's ridiculous. You're one of the smartest people I've ever met. You just learn things differently than in a classroom. And you could never do better than you are right now," Ethan said firmly. "You're strong and intelligent and beautiful and kind. Any man would be lucky to have you in his life." They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Ethan felt something shift inside him, a wall he had built around his heart after Catherine left him crumbling away. He was falling in love with Lily, truly and deeply, in a way he had never experienced before. "Lily," he said quietly, "I know we said we'd take a month, but I already know. I want to spend my life getting to know you better. I want to wake up every morning and learn something new about you. I want to be there when things are good and when they're bad. I want to fix broken wagon wheels and broken hearts and build something real and lasting." Lily turned to look at him, tears glistening in her eyes, but this time they were happy tears. "I know too," she whispered. "I've known for weeks now. I love you, Ethan York. I love you too, Lillian Harper." He leaned in and kissed her, gentle and sweet, and it felt like coming home after a long journey. Mrs. Patterson cleared her throat loudly from inside the house, reminding them of propriety, and they broke apart, both laughing softly. "I should do this properly," Ethan said, sliding off his chair to kneel on the porch in front of her. "I don't have a ring yet, but I'll get you one, the best one I can afford. Lily, will you marry me? Will you take a chance on a life with me, wherever that life might lead?" Lily's smile was brighter than the stars emerging overhead. "Yes," she said. "Yes, absolutely yes." They were married 6 weeks later in the small church in Casa Grande, with Mrs. Patterson and Mrs. Chen and Ethan's boss from the ranch in attendance. Lily wore a dress she had sewn herself, pale yellow with delicate embroidery, and she carried wildflowers that Ethan had ridden out at dawn to pick. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, and when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan felt a completeness he had never known before. They moved into a small house on the edge of town that they rented from an elderly couple who had decided to move to California to be near their daughter. It was not much, just 3 rooms and a porch, but it was theirs. Lily continued working with Mrs. Chen, building a reputation as the best seamstress in the area. Ethan took a job as foreman at the ranch where he had been working, a position that came with better pay and more responsibility. Their first year of marriage was not without challenges. Money was sometimes tight, especially during the harsh winter months when work slowed down. They argued occasionally, learning how to communicate and compromise. Lily struggled with moments of doubt, old wounds from James's rejection surfacing at unexpected times. Ethan had to work through his own insecurities, the fear that he was not enough, that he could not provide the life Lily deserved. But they worked through each challenge together. When money was tight, they got creative, growing vegetables in a small garden behind the house and trading Lily's sewing skills for goods they needed. When they argued, they learned to listen to each other, to explain their feelings without attacking. When doubts surfaced, they reminded each other of their commitment, of the choice they had made to build a life together. On their first anniversary, Ethan surprised Lily with a gift. He had been saving money for months, setting aside every spare coin he could. He presented her with a beautiful gold ring set with a small but perfect sapphire. "I know I promised you a ring when I proposed," he said, slipping it onto her finger. "I wanted to get you something that would last, something as enduring as my love for you." Lily threw her arms around him, tears of joy streaming down her face. "It's perfect. You're perfect. This life we're building is perfect." That night, as they lay together in their bed, Lily rested her head on Ethan's chest. "Do you ever think about that day we met?" she asked. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had just ridden past?" Ethan stroked her hair gently. "All the time. And I thank God every day that I stopped. That broken wagon wheel was the best thing that ever happened to me." "The worst day of my life turned into the best day," Lily murmured. "Finding out James didn't want me anymore hurt so badly, but if he hadn't ended things, I would have married him and never known what real love feels like." "Everything happens for a reason," Ethan said. "I truly believe that now." 2 years into their marriage, Lily discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with joy and fear. Pregnancy and childbirth were dangerous, especially in a frontier town where medical care was limited. But Lily was healthy and strong, and the local midwife, an experienced woman named Sarah who had delivered half the babies in Casa Grande, assured them that everything looked good. As Lily's belly grew, Ethan became even more protective, fussing over her in a way that she found both endearing and occasionally frustrating. He insisted she stop working at the dress shop during her last 2 months, though Lily continued to take in sewing from home. He made sure she had the best food available, trading extra work for fresh milk and eggs. He read books about babies and child rearing that he borrowed from Mrs. Patterson, determined to be the best father possible. On a warm spring evening in 1881, Lily went into labor. Ethan paced the small house while Sarah and Mrs. Chen attended to Lily in the bedroom. The sounds of her pain tore at his heart, making him feel helpless in a way he had never experienced. He prayed harder than he had ever prayed in his life, bargaining with God to keep Lily safe. After what felt like an eternity but was actually about 8 hours, a baby's cry pierced the air. Sarah emerged from the bedroom with a smile on her weathered face. "You have a son," she announced, "and your wife is tired but fine. You can go in now." Ethan rushed into the bedroom to find Lily propped up against pillows, her face exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. He approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at his son for the first time. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was waving tiny fists in the air, his face red from crying. But as Ethan reached out to gently touch his son's hand, the baby's fingers wrapped around his father's finger, and Ethan felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. "He's perfect," Ethan whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "He is," Lily agreed. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months, never quite settling on one that felt right. But now, looking at his son, Ethan knew. "Samuel, after my father, Samuel James York." Lily nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Samuel James. It's perfect." Life changed with the arrival of Samuel. The small house that had seemed sufficient now felt cramped. Ethan took on extra work, saving money to buy land where they could build a real home. Lily balanced caring for Samuel with taking in sewing, often stitching late into the night after the baby was asleep. But despite the exhaustion and the challenges, they were happy. Ethan would come home from long days of work to find Lily singing to Samuel, her voice soft and sweet. He would take his son in his arms, feeling the weight of responsibility and love in equal measure. They would sit together on their porch in the evenings, watching Samuel grow and change, marveling at every new milestone. When Samuel was 18 months old, Ethan had saved enough money to buy a parcel of land about 3 miles outside of Casa Grande. It was not a large piece of property, but it had a natural spring, good grazing land, and enough space to build a proper house. He spent every spare moment working on their new home, enlisting help from friends he had made in town. The house they built was modest but solid, with 4 rooms and a real wooden floor, glass windows, and a porch that wrapped around 2 sides. The day they moved into their new home, Lily stood in the middle of the main room and cried happy tears. "I never imagined having something like this," she said. "A real home of our own." Ethan wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on top of her head. "This is just the beginning. We're going to build a good life here, raise our family, and grow old together. Promise?" Lily asked, turning in his arms to look up at him. "I promise," Ethan said, and he sealed it with a kiss. With the house built, Ethan focused on building their ranch. He started small, buying a handful of cattle and a few horses. The work was hard, requiring long hours and physical labor that left him exhausted. But he loved it in a way he had never loved working for someone else. This was his land, his stock, his future he was building. Lily proved to be an invaluable partner. She kept meticulous records of their expenses and income, helped with the lighter ranch work when she could, and continued to bring in money with her sewing. She also managed to create a warm, welcoming home, making their house a place where Ethan was always eager to return after a long day. When Samuel was 3 years old, Lily discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was harder. She was often ill, exhausted in a way she had not been with Samuel. Ethan worried constantly, but Lily assured him that Sarah said everything was progressing normally, that some pregnancies were just more difficult than others. On a cold January morning in 1884, their daughter was born. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Ethan feared he might lose Lily. But Sarah was skilled and experienced, and both mother and daughter came through safely. They named her Rose Elizabeth York, and she was tiny and delicate, with Lily's auburn hair and Ethan's green eyes. Samuel was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything, and Ethan had to gently teach him how to be careful with the fragile infant. "Our family is complete," Lily said one evening, nursing Rose while Samuel played at her feet and Ethan sat beside her. "This is everything I ever wanted and more than I ever dreamed possible." Ethan looked at his family, his heart so full it almost hurt. "When I stopped to help you that day, I thought I was just fixing a wagon wheel. I had no idea I was finding my entire future." Life settled into a rhythm over the next several years. The ranch grew slowly but steadily. Ethan built a good reputation for raising quality cattle and training reliable horses. Lily's sewing business continued to thrive, with women coming from as far as Phoenix to commission dresses from her. Samuel grew into a thoughtful, hard-working boy who loved helping his father with the ranch. Rose was bright and curious, always asking questions and wanting to learn everything. The Arizona Territory changed around them. In 1886, the Apache leader Geronimo surrendered, marking the end of the Apache Wars. The railroad continued to expand, bringing more settlers and more opportunities. Casa Grande grew from a small town into a thriving community. Ethan and Lily made friends, became respected members of the community, and built a life that was rich in ways that had nothing to do with money. But it was not all easy. In 1887, a drought hit the territory hard. The spring on their property saved their livestock when other ranchers lost half their herds. Ethan shared his water with neighbors, earning gratitude and strengthening bonds that would last a lifetime. In 1889, Samuel fell from a horse and broke his arm. The fear Ethan and Lily felt during those moments before they knew he would be okay was profound, a reminder of how precious and fragile their happiness was. Through every challenge, Ethan and Lily faced it together. They had learned over the years how to communicate, how to support each other, how to be true partners in every sense of the word. Their love had deepened and matured, moving beyond the initial passion to something more enduring and profound. On their 10th anniversary, they arranged for Mrs. Patterson to watch the children and spent the day together, just the two of them. They rode out to the spot where they had first met, the place where Lily's wagon wheel had broken and changed both their lives. "You remember how I looked that day?" Lily asked, laughing. "Covered in dust, crying like my world had ended. I remember thinking you were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen," Ethan said. "Even with the tears and the dust, actually, especially with the tears and the dust, you were real in a way that Catherine never was." Lily leaned against him. "I was so heartbroken that day. I thought James ending our engagement was the worst thing that could happen to me. I was wrong. The worst thing would have been marrying him and never meeting you. I used to wonder if I would ever get over Catherine," Ethan admitted. "If I would ever trust love again. Then I met you, and I realized I had never really been in love before. What I felt for Catherine was just a shadow of what I feel for you." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun move across the sky. Then Ethan turned to Lily, taking both her hands in his. "I need you to know something. That day when I fixed your wagon wheel and asked if I could fix your heart too, I thought I was being noble, helping someone in need. But the truth is, you fixed my heart just as much as I fixed yours. You taught me what real love looks like. You gave me a family and a purpose. You made me a better man than I ever could have been on my own." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but they were happy tears, the kind she had cried so many times since meeting Ethan. "We fixed each other," she said softly. "That's what real love does. It doesn't complete you because you were never incomplete. It just makes everything better, brighter, more worthwhile." They rode back to their ranch as the sun began to set, racing each other like they had done in the early days of their courtship, laughing and free. When they arrived home, the children ran out to meet them, Samuel now a lanky 10-year-old and Rose a spirited 7-year-old. Ethan scooped Rose up in his arms while Lily hugged Samuel, and they all went inside together. That evening, after the children were in bed, Ethan and Lily sat on their porch, watching the stars emerge in the vast Arizona sky. Ethan thought about all the choices that had led him to this moment. Leaving Texas after his heartbreak, taking jobs that moved him steadily west, deciding to ride through Casa Grande on that particular day, choosing to stop when he heard a woman crying. "What are you thinking about?" Lily asked, snuggling closer to him. "Just how lucky I am," Ethan said. "How a broken wagon wheel led to the best life I could imagine." "Luck had nothing to do with it," Lily said firmly. "It was choice. You chose to stop and help. You chose to be kind to a stranger. You chose to see past my tears to who I really was. And I chose to trust you to give love another chance, to believe that not all men were like James." "Fair enough," Ethan agreed. "Though I still say there was some divine intervention involved. Someone up there knew we needed each other." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from years of truly knowing another person. Ethan thought about the future, about watching his children grow up, about eventually having grandchildren, about growing old with the woman beside him. It would not all be easy. Life never was. There would be more challenges, more hardships, more moments of fear and uncertainty. But they would face it all together, just as they had faced everything so far. The years continued to pass, marked by both joys and sorrows. In 1891, Ethan's father died back in Texas, and Ethan made the long journey to attend the funeral and help settle the estate. His share of the inheritance allowed him to expand the ranch significantly, buying more land and livestock. He used some of the money to build a new barn and to upgrade their house, adding 2 more bedrooms and a proper parlor. Samuel showed a natural talent for working with horses, and by the time he was 14, he was helping train the horses they sold. Rose discovered a love of reading and learning, and Lily taught her everything she knew about sewing while Ethan taught her about running a ranch. They were raising children who were both educated and practical, who could work with their hands but also think critically. In 1893, when Samuel was 12 and Rose was 9, Lily discovered she was pregnant again. The news was unexpected, as she was now 36 years old, but also welcome. This pregnancy was different from the others, easier in some ways but also bringing new worries because of Lily's age. On a beautiful autumn day, their second son was born. They named him Thomas Edward York, and he was a healthy, robust baby with a powerful set of lungs. Samuel and Rose were fascinated by their baby brother, taking turns helping care for him. 3 children, Ethan said, holding Thomas while watching Samuel help Rose with her reading. "Our family keeps growing." "Are you happy?" Lily asked, though she knew the answer. She just liked hearing him say it. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Ethan assured her. "Sometimes I think about that cowboy I used to be, drifting from place to place with no real purpose. That man seems like a stranger now." "That man was just waiting to find his home," Lily said. "Just like I was waiting to find mine." As the new century approached, Casa Grande continued to grow and change. The Arizona Territory was moving closer to statehood, though it would still be years away. The railroad had brought prosperity and progress. The town had a proper school now, a telegraph office, several shops and businesses. The wild, dangerous frontier of Ethan's youth was slowly being tamed, but some things remained constant. The desert still stretched vast and beautiful in all directions. The sun still beat down with relentless heat in summer and gave way to surprisingly cold winters. And at their ranch, 3 miles outside of town, Ethan and Lily continued to build their life together. Samuel grew into a responsible young man, skilled with horses and cattle, respected by everyone who knew him. At 18, he fell in love with the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a sweet girl named Anne who had Samuel's same work ethic and values. Ethan and Lily gave their blessing, pleased to see their son find the kind of love they shared. Rose, at 15, was being courted by the son of Casa Grande's doctor, a young man who was planning to follow in his father's footsteps. Ethan was protective, carefully vetting the young man's intentions, but even he had to admit that the boy seemed decent and genuinely cared for Rose. Thomas, now 5 years old, was already showing signs of having his father's patience and his mother's quick mind. He followed Ethan everywhere, asking endless questions and soaking up everything his father taught him. On a summer evening in 1899, the entire family gathered on the porch after dinner. Samuel and Anne sat close together, making plans for their upcoming wedding. Rose was reading a book while her suitor, David, sat nearby, clearly content just to be in her presence. Thomas was playing with a wooden horse Ethan had carved for him, and Ethan and Lily sat in their rocking chairs, watching their family with deep satisfaction. "Can I ask you something?" Samuel said suddenly, looking at his parents. "I've always wondered about how you two met. You've told us the basic story about the broken wagon wheel, but not the whole thing. What really happened that day?" Ethan and Lily exchanged a glance, and Lily nodded, giving him permission to tell the full story. Ethan leaned back in his chair, gathering his thoughts. "I was riding into Casa Grande, planning to just pass through," he began. "I had no intention of stopping, no reason to think that day would be any different from 100 other days. Then, I heard crying. Your mother was kneeling beside her broken wagon, and she looked so lost and heartbroken. I had just found out that the man I was supposed to marry had changed his mind," Lily continued, picking up the story. "I felt like my life was over, like I had made this huge journey for nothing. I stopped to fix the wagon wheel," Ethan said. "And while I was working, your mother told me what had happened. And I don't know what came over me, but I looked at her and said something completely crazy." "What did you say?" Rose asked, leaning forward with interest. She had heard this story before, but never in this much detail. "I told her I could fix the wagon wheel, but that there was something else broken that needed fixing too," Ethan said, smiling at the memory. "I asked if I could try to fix her heart." Samuel laughed. "That's terrible. I can't believe that actually worked." "It was honest," Lily said firmly. "It was genuine and heartfelt, and exactly what I needed to hear. Not some smooth line or empty promise, but a real offer from someone who understood pain. We made a deal to spend a month getting to know each other," Ethan continued. "But we both knew within a few weeks that this was it. This was the real thing. And 6 weeks later we were married," Lily finished. "Looking back, it seems fast, maybe even reckless. But when you know, you know. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones that seem craziest at the time." Anne spoke up shyly. "That's one of the most romantic things I've ever heard. Samuel told me you two had a special story, but I didn't realize just how special." "The point is," Ethan said, looking at his children and their future spouses, "sometimes the worst moments lead to the best things. Your mother's broken wagon wheel and broken heart led to this family, this life, everything we have. So when things seem darkest, remember that good things might be just around the corner." As the stars began to appear in the sky, the family continued talking, sharing stories and dreams. Ethan reached over and took Lily's hand, squeezing it gently. She squeezed back, and they shared a smile that spoke of 21 years of marriage, 3 children, countless challenges overcome, and a love that had only grown stronger with time. The new century arrived with celebration and hope. Samuel married Anne in a beautiful ceremony at the church in Casa Grande, with half the town in attendance. They built a house on a corner of Ethan's land, starting their own life while remaining close to family. A year later, they made Ethan and Lily grandparents with the birth of a daughter they named Lily Ann, in honor of her grandmother. Rose married David 2 years later, and they moved to Phoenix, where he would complete his medical training. It was hard for Lily to see her daughter move away, but Rose promised to visit often, and she kept that promise. Thomas grew into a capable young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. By the time he was 15, in 1908, he was running many of the day-to-day operations, allowing Ethan to slow down a bit. Arizona achieved statehood in 1912, an event that Ethan and Lily celebrated with their family. They were now citizens of a state, not a territory, and the changes they had witnessed over the decades were remarkable. The wild west of their youth had been transformed into a place of growing cities, established laws, and relative safety. In 1918, Ethan turned 66 years old and Lily turned 61. They had been married for 40 years, a milestone that seemed both impossible and perfectly natural. They celebrated quietly, just the two of them, returning once again to the spot where they had first met. "40 years," Lily said, standing in the place where her wagon wheel had broken all those years ago. "Can you believe it?" "Not even a little bit," Ethan admitted. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like we've always been together." "You have any regrets?" Lily asked. Ethan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. His hair was now silver, his face weathered by decades in the sun, but his eyes were still clear and bright. "Not a single one. Stopping to help you that day was the best decision I ever made, even though I was crying and covered in dust." Lily teased, her own hair now more silver than auburn, her face lined with the evidence of a life well lived. "Especially because of that," Ethan said seriously. "You were real. You were vulnerable but strong, broken but not destroyed. You were everything I had been looking for without knowing I was looking." They stood there for a long time, holding each other in the place where their story had begun. The desert stretched around them, unchanging yet ever-changing, just like their love. They had weathered storms together, both literal and figurative. They had raised 3 good children who were now raising children of their own. They had built a successful ranch and a respected place in their community. But more than any of that, they had built a partnership based on trust, respect, and genuine affection. "I love you," Lily whispered. "Just as much now as I did that first day, maybe more." "I love you too," Ethan replied. "And I'll love you until my last breath and beyond." They rode back to their ranch, moving slower now than they once had but still comfortable in the saddle. Their home was filled with the sounds of family, as Samuel and Anne's 3 children were visiting, along with Rose and David who were in town for a few weeks. Thomas had married a wonderful woman named Grace 2 years earlier, and they were expecting their first child. That evening, surrounded by children and grandchildren, Ethan and Lily sat in their favorite spot on the porch. They watched their family with deep contentment, seeing their legacy in every face, hearing it in every laugh. Their grandchildren played in the yard, the same yard where Samuel and Rose and Thomas had played years earlier. "We did well," Lily said quietly, for Ethan's ears only. "We did," Ethan agreed. "Better than I ever imagined possible." As the sun set over the Arizona desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, Ethan thought about that day 40 years ago when he had ridden into Casa Grande with no plan except to find a meal and a bed. He thought about the sound of a woman crying, the sight of a broken wagon wheel, and the impulse to stop and help. He thought about how one small choice had changed everything, had given him a life beyond his wildest dreams. "Thank you," he said to Lily. "For what?" She asked, though she had a feeling she knew. For saying yes. For taking a chance on a dusty cowboy who had nothing to offer except his heart and his hands. For building this life with me. For being my partner and my best friend. For everything. Lily squeezed his hand. "Thank you for stopping. For seeing me at my lowest moment and offering hope. For keeping your promise to fix my broken heart. For giving me a family and a home and a love I didn't believe existed." They sat together as the stars emerged, the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss, their wedding, the birth of their children, and every important moment of their lives together. They had grown old together, just as Ethan had promised that day when they moved into their first house. Their bodies were slower now, marked by age and hard work, but their love was as strong as ever. The years continued to pass gently. Ethan and Lily gradually handed over more of the ranch operations to Thomas and Grace, who ran it with the same dedication and care that Ethan had always shown. They spent their days surrounded by family, watching grandchildren grow and eventually welcoming great-grandchildren. They took walks together every evening when the weather permitted, moving slowly but steadily, still holding hands like they had done since the beginning. They sat on their porch and told stories to their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, stories about the old days, about how Arizona had changed, about how they had met and fallen in love. The story of the broken wagon wheel became a family legend, told and retold, each generation adding their own embellishments while the core truth remained the same. A cowboy had stopped to help a crying woman. He had fixed her broken wagon wheel and asked to fix her broken heart. And she had said yes, leading to a love story that spanned decades and touched countless lives. In 1928, Casa Grande had grown into a proper city, with paved streets and electric lights and automobiles replacing horses. The ranch that Ethan and Lily had built was now a substantial operation, providing a good living for Thomas and his family. Samuel's ranch was equally successful, and Rose's husband had become one of the most respected doctors in Phoenix. Ethan was now 76 years old and Lily 73. They moved slower, needed more rest, but their minds were still sharp and their love still deep. They spent most of their time at the house now, content to let the younger generation handle the physical work of running the ranch. On a warm spring morning, Ethan and Lily sat on their porch, watching the sun rise over the desert. They had seen thousands of sunrises together, but each one still felt special, still filled them with gratitude for another day together. "You remember the first sunrise we watched together?" Lily asked, her hand nestled in Ethan's. "I do," Ethan said. "It was 2 days after we met. We had gone for a walk before I had to go to work, and we sat on a hill and watched the sun come up. You told me you had never seen anything so beautiful. And you said that you saw something more beautiful every time you looked at me," Lily recalled, smiling at the memory. "I thought you were just being charming." "I was being honest," Ethan said. "I still am. You're still the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Lily laughed softly. "We're both old and wrinkled now, Ethan. You don't have to keep flattering me." "It's not flattery if it's true," Ethan insisted. "Besides, I'm not looking at your face, not really. I'm seeing 50 years of memories. I'm seeing the woman who cried over a broken wagon wheel, and the woman who bravely said yes to a stranger's proposal. I'm seeing the mother who raised our children with such love and wisdom. I'm seeing my partner, my best friend, my everything." Tears slid down Lily's cheeks, but they were happy tears, the kind she had cried so often throughout their life together. "I never imagined I could be this happy. That day when James sent that telegram ending our engagement, I thought my life was over. I couldn't see past my pain to the possibilities ahead. I'm glad he was a fool," Ethan said, "because his loss was my greatest gain." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the world wake up around them. Birds sang in the trees Lily had planted years ago. The horses in the corral stirred, ready for their morning feed. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of Thomas and Grace getting ready for the day's work. "Ethan," Lily said softly, "whatever happens, whatever comes next, I want you to know that you kept your promise. You fixed my broken heart completely. You gave me more love and more happiness than I ever thought possible." "And you fixed mine," Ethan replied. "I didn't even realize how broken I was until you showed me what wholeness felt like." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Ethan and Lily went inside for breakfast with their family. Thomas and Grace were there with their 3 children. Samuel and Anne had come over early, bringing 2 of their grandchildren who were visiting. The house was full of noise and life and love, exactly how Ethan and Lily had always dreamed it would be over breakfast. The youngest great-grandchild, a little girl of 5 named Emma, climbed into Lily's lap. "Great-grandma," she said, "tell me again about how you and great-grandpa met." Lily looked at Ethan, and he nodded encouragingly. So she told the story once more, about the broken wagon wheel and the crying woman and the cowboy who stopped to help. She told about heartbreak and hope, about taking chances and building dreams. And as she told the story, surrounded by the family that had grown from that one moment of choice, she felt overwhelming gratitude for every single day she had been given. The seasons continued their eternal cycle. Summer heat gave way to autumn cool. Winter chill surrendered to spring warmth. Ethan and Lily moved through their days with quiet contentment, surrounded by love and family. They celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, welcomed new babies and mourned those who passed. They watched the world change around them while their love remained constant. On their 55th wedding anniversary in 1933, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a massive celebration. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren filled every corner of the house and overflowed into the yard. There was food and music and laughter, and at the center of it all were Ethan and Lily, holding hands and smiling at the legacy they had created. Samuel stood up to give a toast, his own hair now silver, his children grown with families of their own. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass. "You showed us what real love looks like. Not the easy love of good times, but the enduring love that survives challenges and hardships. You taught us that the best things in life are worth fighting for, worth working for, worth everything. Thank you for being the foundation of this family." Rose stood next, her eyes misty with tears. "You taught me that being strong doesn't mean never crying or never hurting. Mom, you showed me that vulnerability takes courage. Dad, you showed me what a good man looks like, and I was lucky enough to find one of my own because of your example." Thomas stood last, the son who had inherited the ranch and carried on his father's legacy. "You built something here that will last long after we're all gone. Not just a ranch or a business, but a family bound together by love and respect. You took a broken wagon wheel and turned it into this." He gestured to the crowd of people filling their home. "That's not just fixing something. That's creating a miracle." Ethan stood slowly, using his cane for support, and pulled Lily to her feet beside him. They looked out at the sea of faces, seeing their own features reflected back in different combinations, their legacy living and breathing in every person present. "I'm not good with speeches," Ethan said, his voice still strong despite his age. "But I need you all to know something. Every good thing in my life started the day I met your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother. She made me a better man. She gave my life meaning and purpose. And all of you," he swept his arm to encompass everyone present, "you're the proof that one moment of choice can echo through generations." Lily squeezed his hand, then spoke in her clear, steady voice. "Your father stopped to help a stranger in need. That simple act of kindness changed both our lives. Remember that. Remember that we all have the power to change someone's world with our choices. Be kind, be brave, take chances on love, and when you find something worth holding on to, never let go." The celebration continued long into the night, with music and dancing and stories shared. As the evening wound down and people began to drift home or to bed, Ethan and Lily found themselves alone on their porch once more, watching the stars emerge in the vast Arizona sky. 55 years, Ethan said wonderingly. "More than half a century." "The best 55 years anyone could ask for," Lily said, leaning her head on his shoulder. They sat in the comfortable silence of two people who had spent a lifetime together, who knew each other's thoughts and feelings without words being necessary. Ethan thought about everything they had experienced together, every joy and sorrow, every triumph and challenge. Not a single day had been wasted, not a single moment regretted. "Lily," he said quietly, If I could go back to that day when I was riding into Casa Grande knowing everything I know now, I'd do it all exactly the same. Every moment, every choice, every challenge. Because it all led to us, to the life we've built. So would I, Lily whispered. James breaking our engagement was the best thing that ever happened to me because it meant I was free when you came along. They sat together under the stars. Two people who had started as strangers brought together by a broken wagon wheel and had built a love story that would be remembered for generations. Around them, their family slept, secure in the knowledge that they came from love, that they were part of something bigger than themselves. As Ethan and Lily finally rose to go inside, moving slowly and carefully, supporting each other as they had always done, they paused at the door. Ethan turned to look back at the desert, silvered by moonlight, and thought about the cowboy he had once been. That young man had been searching for something without even knowing what it was. He had found it in a woman crying by the side of the road, in her courage to trust again, in the family they had built together. "Thank you for fixing my broken heart," Lily said as they prepared for bed. "Thank you for letting me try," Ethan replied. They lay together in the darkness, hands intertwined, hearts beating in comfortable rhythm. They had grown old together, just as Ethan had promised all those years ago. Their bodies were worn from decades of hard work and life, but their spirits were strong, their love undiminished by time. The years rolled on with gentle inevitability. Ethan and Lily celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary in 1938, surrounded once again by their ever-growing family. They spent their days in quiet contentment, taking short walks when weather permitted, sitting on their porch, sharing meals with family, telling stories to great-grandchildren who listened with wide eyes. Ethan passed away peacefully in his sleep on a cool autumn night in 1940 at the age of 88. He went to bed beside Lily, kissed her good night as he had done for 62 years, and simply did not wake up. Lily, lying beside him, knew the moment he was gone. She held his hand and cried silent tears, mourning the loss of her partner while being grateful for every single day they had shared. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by Ethan York. He had been a good man, a kind man, a man who had lived his values and loved deeply. His legacy lived on in his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, and in the countless people he had helped over his long life. Lily lived for 2 more years after Ethan's death. She remained in their home, surrounded by family who made sure she was never alone for long. She spent her days remembering, sharing stories, and preparing to join the man she had loved for more than 6 decades. On a warm spring morning in 1942, Lillian Harper York died peacefully, sitting in her rocking chair on the porch where she had spent so many hours with Ethan. She was 87 years old, and according to those who found her, she had a smile on her face, as if she could see something wonderful just ahead. The family buried Lily beside Ethan in the cemetery overlooking Casa Grande. Their graves were side by side, 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built a love that lasted a lifetime. The headstones were simple but meaningful, bearing their names, dates, and a single sentence that told their entire story. He fixed her wagon wheel and her broken heart, and together they built a legacy of love. For generations after, the story of Ethan and Lily was passed down in the family. The ranch continued to operate, now run by Samuel's grandson, but still bearing the York name. The house where they had raised their family was preserved and maintained, a testament to what 2 people could build when they chose love over fear. Young couples in the family, facing their own challenges and doubts, would be told the story of the broken wagon wheel. They would learn about the cowboy who stopped to help a crying woman, who asked to fix her heart, and then spent the rest of his life keeping that promise. They would learn that real love is not easy or simple, but it is always worth fighting for in Casa Grande, now a thriving city far removed from the frontier town Ethan and Lily had known. There was a small museum dedicated to local history. In one corner hung a photograph of Ethan and Lily, taken on their 50th wedding anniversary. In it, they sat on their porch, hands intertwined, looking at each other with expressions of such pure love and joy that visitors often stopped to stare, moved by the evident depth of feeling captured in that frozen moment. Beneath the photograph was the story, carefully recorded and preserved. It told about a woman whose heart had been broken by a faithless fiancé, about a cowboy who had known his own share of heartbreak, about a chance meeting on a dusty road, and about a love that had grown from that unpromising beginning into something beautiful and enduring. The story always ended the same way. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best things. A broken wagon wheel brought two people together who were meant to find each other. From that single moment of kindness and courage came a family, a legacy, and a love story that would be remembered long after they were gone. And so the tale of Ethan York and Lillian Harper lived on, inspiring new generations to believe in love, to take chances, to be kind to strangers, and to remember that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Their love had been tested by time, challenge, and hardship, and it had emerged stronger, deeper, more enduring than they could have imagined on that hot July day in 1878 when a cowboy stopped to help a crying woman. In the end, that was their legacy. Not just the ranch or the family or the material things they had built, but the proof that real love exists, that it can heal broken hearts, that it can transform lives, and that it can last not just until death but beyond. Living on in memory and story, inspiring others to open their hearts and take chances on love. The broken wagon wheel that had brought them together was long gone, rotted away to dust decades ago. But what it had set in motion continued, an unbroken chain of love and family that stretched across generations, all started by one cowboy's choice to stop and help, and one woman's courage to say yes to an impossible possibility. Their story was complete, a whole life lived and loved, beginning with tears beside a broken wagon wheel and ending with peace and contentment, surrounded by the family they had created. It was a story of heartbreak turned to hope, of pain transformed into joy, of two broken hearts that had healed each other and become something stronger together than they ever could have been apart. And in the hearts of those who knew their story, Ethan and Lily lived on, forever young, forever in love, forever standing together beside that broken wagon wheel where everything began, where a question was asked and answered, where two lives became one, and where one of the greatest love stories of the American West was born from the simplest of acts: kindness, courage, and the willingness to fix not just a broken wheel, but a broken heart.